All right, guys, today's video is copper sulfate 2.5 pound bottle. This is actually my second round of copper treatment out here. So there's already 2.5 pounds that's been put on the main plot. So if I want my parts per million to be at least 4 to 5, I need an additional 8 pounds. Well, I've got more than 8 pounds here. That's a 25 pound bag of copper. So I'm going to be treating the chestnut trees with that as well, and give them at least another trace mineral that they desperately need. So let's talk about copper sulfate here. Why am I putting this in my plot? Well, there's multiple reasons for not only plants, but for deer. Deer need copper. If copper is not adequate, it can cause them to get diseases. Their joints can get weaker, quicker. Bone density, bone development of fawns is critical. So we need a denser deer when your copper levels are not adequate like mine are. So deer are lacking potential in the bone department. What does that lead to for bucks? Antler department. The better the structure of the bones are, the more they can pull out of their bodies to support antler growth and help with larger antler growth. So copper is very important for deer. When copper is adequate in a deer's body, they can fight disease. They have better joints, stronger joints, and somewhat larger frames than a deer that is on a lower copper density. And here's another great fact too about copper's assistant with iron absorption in deer. So deer can actually have trouble absorbing iron even though it may be adequate out here, but if my copper is not, then the absorption rate will be lower in deer's bodies. They would have to eat more for a longer period of time to try to get the same amount of nutrition versus being way more efficient. So that's the big reason why I need copper out here as far as deer go. Copper can actually go higher than 4 to 5 parts per million. You know, you can refer back to my soil test videos. I will go ahead and tell you what is considered toxic for copper. This all depends on the soil type you have and the amount of organic matter. Organic matter, the higher it goes, the better off you are with copper. If you have sandy soil, 50 parts per million becomes toxic. See how much higher I can actually raise my copper and not get into trouble? 50 parts per million. But I don't have sandy soil. I have clay. What is the effect on clay? 150 parts per million is considered toxic. 3 times the amount of sandy soil. Why in the world is clay such a higher number than sandy soil? A lot of it has to do with organic matter and the properties of clay itself. Sometimes actually higher organic matter prevents toxicity in certain nutrients. So we don't want to go to 50 parts per million. We don't want to go to 150 parts per million. 4 to 5 will be generally what a lot of you need. For instance, this sorghum or this screen wall with all these different sorghum, the minimum to adequately, Lord, I think my pronunciation's going to pot here. The amount needed to run a screen wall would be about 5 parts per million, especially in your Milo. It needs about 5 parts per million to be considered efficient. So that's where I want to get to help these plants out. Since I've actually treated this place with copper, I can already tell quite a bit of difference here. Now I know my hay field has been freshly cut, but it's pretty obvious where the green stops on the healthier soil. My hay field was definitely greener than what you're seeing right now, but it wasn't as green as this plot. I've got some sunflowers in here that are just as green as they can be. Copper is definitely helping that a lot. And that was just one treatment of copper. And I can tell, you know, like looking right here, there's a darker green of color versus here. I may have actually I do remember going a little heavier right there because some of it spilled out of the bottle. So the reason I'm using the bottle is so I don't go overboard. Every time I use a bottle, I know it's 2.5 pounds per bottle. That way I don't get greedy and just start throwing heavy fistfuls of copper out here. So let's talk about the plants. I've kind of highlighted the fact that there's some green in here that I love seeing. Why is this copper so important? Copper, when it comes to plant and soil use, is Earth's, this version right here is Earth's insecticide, this combination. Now, I want to reiterate something here. If you want to call me a cheater on this, go ahead. But this is the only manufactured fertilizer that is still listed under organic farming, because this combination naturally occurs in nature, and all they do is recreate that combination. Then they put this dye. Sometimes they dye it, sometimes they don't. Actually, some of the blue can be naturally attained that way through copper and sulfur combining. This is considered crystals. So it is considered still under the organic list, but it's really the only one that clears that hurdle as far as organics go. So there is no microbial kill off, there's no worm kill off, there's no bacteria kill off. That's great. Now, copper sulfate also assists microbes. That's what we want. There is an efficiency in which microbes can transfer nitrogen, or the rate at which they can convert nitrogen out of the air to the plant. If your copper levels are low, that transition from air to the bacteria to the plant is interrupted. It's slower, it's not as efficient. Copper shows up, we have a much higher efficiency rating. That is why the green level in here is taking off. My nitrogen pumpers are getting a much better or a much more efficient nitrogen ability. Even this soybean, this volunteer bean, looks really good, especially for section 1 up here. Also, we have other fantastic properties of copper. This is, of course, Earth's natural insecticide, like boron. So when boron and copper are adequate, you have a really good resistance built up against fungus, bad bacteria, and any possible diseases that could crop up in your soil. So copper fights that and helps maintain soil health. So if you've seen my copper reading, this plot tested at the highest end, which was down here at 0.55. By the time you get up here, we're at 0.28 or 0.29. We're dangerously close to falling out of what they consider to be optimal. Remember, I told you in the soil test video, that is nowhere near optimal. So we're going to up our game by adding copper. Also, copper has a really good ability for, oh, I'm about to repeat myself. Let's not do that. I was about to say fixation again, but it's not. That's actually all copper actually is good for. I mean, you can see I've done one treatment. I've also done manganese and sulfur up here again very recently. So the whole issues in the leaves is rapidly beginning to drop off. I mean, look, this is section 1. We are in the heart of section 1 up here. That soybean looks so much stronger than last year's crop. Soybean is becoming more efficient at nitrogen fixation. Oh, and that reminds me too, there is a little bit here on that copper part with fungus and bacteria. How in the world does that work? Well, copper sulfate will damage fungus cells. So when they're damaged, they cannot function properly, and it cuts down their reproduction rates or kills off the fungus. Because if that fungus can't produce proper cell structure, it ain't going to go nowhere. Bacteria does the same thing. It destroys the cell structure of bad bacteria. So now you know why I need to get copper up in this food plot. So I'm very excited that I'm actually at least addressing this mineral in plots. This is a very rare shortage, and I know it's really bad all around this place, and it's not going to be in this plot. But I do love what I'm seeing. We have really strong growth. See, the shine in these plants is increasing. I can tell that by looking at the sunflowers. They're getting very reflective. Even section 2, which has also had copper treatment. And I'm not going to show myself broadcasting this, but don't go overboard with the copper. Keep it light amounts. Not as light as boron. Boron is very toxic. Copper is also a toxic mineral. So do not go ridiculously high with copper. So let's take a look at a few of these sunflowers. And this is also helping the speed of growth in the plants here that are still alive. The ones I didn't replant anyway. The first copper treatment was about a week ago, maybe 10 days. So look at that. Right, this is before the sulfur manganese treatment. Copper came in, sulfur manganese came in. We're getting a lot better, much better. The sunflowers greened up really quick. Buckwheat in here is getting very thick, very heavy stemmed buckwheat. These plants have a very different approach. And I will get my magnesium levels up. I just haven't touched that yet. The green will get even better. This area here was also treated with copper. And here's you another one. This just reminded me of this. When copper is adequate in your soil, and I talked about killing off diseases and fungus, your germination rates will be higher under adequate soils with copper, or adequate copper readings in soil. So you're actually going to save money with your seeds, and they will also have more vigor than places that are not adequate at all. So there you go, guys, a video on copper. And I'm not going to video the broadcasting, that will bore you to death, but that's the reason why I need copper. And yes, this food plot needs spraying, and I'll do a video for that. But right now, this is all about getting some trace minerals right. And then we're going to come in here and eradicate some weeds. And then I'm going to replant one additional species, which is the deer vetch. I'm turning it loose in here. And that will help my nitrogen levels raise even faster than the route I'm going now. All right, guys, so that's it. Copper looks promising. This is just one treatment. Next round begins today, and I will finish it up with at least an 8-pound rating. I will set on that for the year, and then when I do my soil test again, I'm going to see where my copper reading lands. If it's still below 4, I will put another certain amount depending on what the soil test shows me. But this plot is rapidly advancing in other sections that would rival what 3 was doing. just one additional trace mineral being fixed up in here. All right, guys, have a good one. All right, here we go. This is a part 2 to copper sulfate. So I'm going to show the treatment of the chestnut trees. Before I step into that, I want you to notice the sheer damage that has happened to my trees. That is from our once in every 17 year cicada invasions. So this is year 17, and we got rocked. We had a very high concentration of cicadas here. Some of these trees have been nearly, if not completely, wiped out of any chance of producing nuts this year. So I want you to keep that thought in your mind. If you're experiencing something like this, that means you can see the oak tree has been affected, that the nut crop is likely to be reduced this year. So what do you do when you think the nut crop is in danger of being lower than normal? You put out more food if you are able to. That's how you counter bad or down nut years. So what I intend to do here is treat every one of these trees with an infusion of copper. The sick tree over there is going to get a nice dose of copper. Even my healthiest tree is still going to get copper. Remember, my soil test in the food plot indicated 0.55 being the best. Well, that was right here. The further up the hill you went, the lower the copper reading got. So what do you think's happening as you're heading up the hill? Well, the readings are going to probably be the same. It's going to decrease as I head up the hill. So a strategy that you might think about is going, meeting if you're doing the 4 to 5 parts per million, you meet your goal here, but knowing as you head up the hill, it's got to be at a heavier rate. That's how you try to balance this out. So that soil test has taught me a lot about how the nutrients have degraded as you head up the hill. So today, though, I'm not using the bottle. I'm just going to hand broadcast today. Now, I want to add a couple of extra tidbits here that I should have remembered to do in the first video. Copper sulfate is the other acidic fertilizer. Now, because we're not using high volumes like you would nitrogen, the effect on your pH would be more minimal compared to what nitrogen can do. But this is acidic, so just be aware of that. Also, copper actually helps stimulate roots, not on the same scale as boron, but if you're thinking about the grand scheme of things, if I'm fixing this, I'm fixing boron, I'm fixing magnesium, all these benefits that I list, sounds like it's going to create a super strong plant. That's exactly what we're doing. And when you create super strong, healthy plants, guess what happens when deer comes in here to eat it? They get super strong too. That's the effect. There's no bad side effect to that. Better nutrients, better deer. Same with these chestnuts. Now, I got lucky here. This heavy duty producer and the other one didn't get hit near as bad as some of these trees. So we're still going to get some production. But the overall outcome is going to be quite a bit less than expected. So what I'm going to do is the easiest thing to do is cover this whole ground in copper. I am not going to I'm not doing that because I want to keep some reserve copper for my next soil test. So we're going to scatter copper all around these trees. Now, remember, you can treat it like I did the boron. You can do a 20-foot radius, a 10-foot radius, because these trees are bigger now than when I did the copper or the boron treatment. So in this case, I'm fanning out a little further. And also, I should have mentioned this too. I don't know why I just didn't remember all this in the first video. Copper also helps with seed development in plants. So one warning sign that you actually could look for is, for instance, soybean over here. I found this in many places last year where I had underdeveloped pods. Some of the seeds were very tiny, some of them were quite large. You know, had a wide variety of seed sizes. If copper is low, seed development can be deformed. See, this is why it's hard to spot copper. It has many effects on plants. So if I've raised my copper levels, the seed output of my soybean will be better. So I'm actually increasing my bean production as far as development of seeds. Same thing goes with milo, corn, other species of plants. So if you're planting corn as a food plot product, check your copper levels. There's another highly important one that I'll talk about that when I get to that point, but it's also has to do with development for corn seeds and milo, but copper helps with creating that. So I just want you all to see I actually am treating trees with copper. Now, does chestnuts need to have 4 to 5 parts per million? Maybe. I actually haven't looked it up. I just know I want 4 to 5 in here to try to maintain a better consistency of health in the soil. So here's the tree I've been working on. Pretty obvious that the grass around here is doing quite a bit better. I haven't had time to do my mowing, but I have aired that tree out pretty good under there. So I bought myself a little bit of time, but just some pretty rough cicada damage, but the tree is actually doing all right. So we're going to treat this tree with copper only, and let's see if these things don't start growing again. Interesting, right? Because both of my chestnuts up there in the island, as soon as they got hit with copper, they took off. All right, here. So after this, I'm just going to shut the video off. I don't want to bore you to death. So this one got hit pretty hard. So did that other good one. That one there usually produces pretty good. Well, we're not going to get much out of it. A lot of dead limbs. All right, so that's going to end the video. And let's see how much these copper treatments help. Let's do a couple of before and afters with this video. So let's go ahead and look at the sick tree. I think this will help. Where you got to look for evidence that things are working. All right, here we are at the sicker tree. That's one that's been struggling to grow. The shine is very muted, very dull. Growth has pretty much stopped on this tree. I don't think there's any growth occurring whatsoever, but in general, it's only a little bit better than last year. Very little improvement. This tree is still weak. So let's see what happens when copper gets introduced. So take a look at these leaf colors, which is better, by the way, but we still have some splotchiness in here. I mean, the shine is nowhere near as good as some of these other trees. And let's look at the sick tree up here. I think that one would be a great before and after, because it's by far the worst tree up here now. I mean, it's healthier trees. They'll either green up a little bit more or they're just going to start growing again. But we're going to get copper in here working. And this will help increase the nut nutrition as well. So here's the sick one. Very, very poor color. That is one stressed out tree right there. I put out nitrogen here 2 days ago, so remember that too. All right, so some of this color is caused by cicadas. Most of it's actually not, but some of it is. So remember this, very poor, I mean extremely poor color in this tree. So 1 copper treatment and very minimal nitrogen was used here, and we'll see what happens to it. All right guys, so hope this video helps you, as these trees are going to undergo a little bit of a health upgrade, even though I got totally annihilated by cicadas. All right guys, if you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.